Hello, my name is Gustavo Cerdas, and I would like to tell you a little bit about The Minister's Black Veil by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Nathaniel Hawthorne was born in Salem, Massachusetts, the United States, in 1804 and died in 1864. He was categorized as one of the most important writers of dark romanticism. He was raised in a family who had a strong trajectory in the famous witch hunting in Salem at that time. Therefore, it is said and believed that Hawthorne's characters and style of writing have a strong family influence and were shaped with a feeling of inherited guilt. The majority of Hawthorne's writing happened in Puritan New England. In the case of the minister's black veil, the reader can perceive that it is full of symbolism and strong psychological complexity. Hawthorne's strongest details are marked by ideas and moral metaphors related to Puritanism and emphasize on existing devilish sins and human sin. In the following section, my classmate Katia Vega is going to explain the characteristics of Romanticism.
I'm going to mention some of the characteristics of the Romantic period, including its dark side, which is known as Dark Romanticism. And it began in the 18th century in Europe when writers and artists began the Romantic movement. I'm going to mention some of the characteristics from that period, and I believe that nature is number one because nature played a huge role in the Romantic literature. Romantic poets and writers passionately describe the power of nature and each of its qualities. Then passion and emotion. Passion was another characteristic of the Romantic movement. Also, it highlighted emotions such as fear and horror, which were experienced when confronted with the sublimity of nature. The approach to the supernatural and its elements enriched the creativity of the writers of the Romantic period as well. So that was another characteristic. Then the language used in the Romantic literature was characterized by the use of figurative language, metaphors, images, and symbols were present in each of the works from that period. And some of the Romantic authors were Nathaniel Hawthorne, Lord Byron, George Gordon, and John Keats, just to mention some of the writers from that period. The story of the Minister of the Black Veil, written by Nathaniel Hawthorne, is classified as a dark romantic work because it contains the themes of sin, guilt, and looking at the darker side of human life. In the story, Mr. Hoopers is the main character and is represented by the Minister of the Black Veil. In my opinion, Mr. Hooper is an honest man. He not only tries to make his congregation realize that they have hidden sin and that they need to repent, but he himself, by covering his face with the veil, acknowledges that he is in the same situation. I have the impression that he is a sincere man and that he loves his congregation. That's the reason why he confronts them with the message of hidden sin. Not because he wants to judge them, but to make them realize that they need to repent and ask God for forgiveness. So as we see here, the main theme is hidden or secret sin. More specifically, the black veil that Cooper's adopts represents the hidden sin of people, and it's a phrase that is repeated several times in the story. Also, the setting in the story is the New England town of Milford in Connecticut, USA, and it was during the Puritan era. Uh, The story features a minister addressing his congregation with a veil over his eyes and nose, as we've already read. So, in my opinion, the place is very appropriate to develop the story since it is a meeting place for people who apparently fear God, but without a doubt, each of them carries a hidden sin, not necessarily a big sin as a murder, let's say, but small things that people commit every day and try to conceal them from others. In this story, the minister of the black veil tries to make them realize that through its allegorical representation of the covered face. No wonder why everybody was so uncomfortable with the minister's message.
When I read The Minister's Black Veil, the first thing that came to me was the scene, the setting. I felt that I was in the middle of a small town in the middle of nowhere with a place full of streets full of mud, a very old wooden meeting center that was used for different purposes, not only for church. And the bell that sounded, that was being rung by the sexton, was something that attracted me a lot. I could hear the bell when it was ringing. I felt that the most important character in this story is the minister, Mr. Hooper. And he had some symbolisms himself, as well as there were other symbols in the story. I think that the most important symbol in this case was the veil, and Mr. Hooper used the veil because it represented the sin that separated people from God. When people sin, they separate from God and His perfection and from each other. But the effect of Hooper's veil was the production of fear for the congregation, not the need to clean their souls from sinning. There were other symbols that were very, very important for me, like the bell, which in a way it was the manner of communicating people their need to approach God. The sexton, who symbolized the barrier of God's call to approach Him, and also the congregation, who were supposed to symbolize light, holiness, and innocence. But in this case, it was the opposite. People had the impression that it was Mr. Hooper, the sinner, not them. Thank you so much.